show. This will work better. Where's the slideshow going to be?
Dee play. What did you have? Anything. What did I have to learn that? So is there anything I can do to help you out right now? Or
Thank you so much.
Happy to give it.
He went down pretty fast.
It's always nice to be able to remember. We got everything taken care of. We'll catch up.
It has to say like
It's hard to rearrange our
I'm so sorry. What are you doing? Her boyfriend's going to be in my house at 11.
So there were some people here for lunch.
For 2.5 years. Yeah. I mean, they're talking. There's no
It's like, why do you feel responsibility? Let me know. Will you let me know?
Station, yes. I'm sorry to hear that.
Nervous?
So, the game's going on. We have What's parking the car?
I saw you in the post office. Let me see the sign.
Yes.
Okay.
I figured that the reason they called for 2 o'clock is for lunch hour. So,
Like, what's going on? But she went down the
She was so worried about that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
my
and
God.
she fell in her, you know, the whole bit. So.
I don't know. So, JD gonna play? Yeah.
Okay, first I'd like to welcome so many people who are friends of Donald and mine, and Ian and Phil and Alexis and Brandon. I want to, what, just two, is it not loud enough?
I think it's loud enough.
Okay.
Point it more towards your mouth. Just bring it
Oh,
closer.
just to back, there we go, okay. Anyway, thank you so much for being here and being with us today. And I want to especially thank our children, Alexis, Brandon, and Ian, for all the comfort and wonderful things they've been, especially these last few months. And I want to thank Maxine and Sharon, who were wonderful caregivers for Donald, and they helped make his life so much more comfortable, even when he was in pain. And I will say that Maxine somehow was able to convince Donald to do things like he would never do for me or Brandon or Alexis or Ian, like eat prunes, drink prune juice. He said, never, but Maxine did it. And at any rate, Brandon is going to do MC today. You'll hear from me once again. And I want to turn it over to Brandon to take off from here.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming to pay tribute to my dad. We are definitely calling this a celebration, so we are hoping that you guys will enjoy the memory and the memories that are shared of my father that we put forth today. I have a list of people who have asked to speak already. I'm going to read them off really quickly in the order that we plan to bring them up. This list is definitely open for amendment, so if any of you are thinking, if you know already that you want to speak, then please find a way to let me know. I can go stand over there for a little bit. You can come over and just tap me on the shoulder after I'm done talking. If you're unsure right now and you decide a little bit later that you want to speak, that's okay as well. We've got a good hour and a half here of time, a little bit more if we need it. So yeah, with that. So here is the order of speakers that I have listed. I'm going to talk, and then my dad's brother Bobby is going to talk. Then Ian, one of my dad's other sons, is going to talk. Callie, granddaughter. David Parks, nephew. Bryce Brylowski, nephew as well. And then Steve Miller, Claire Fisher, Harold Zirkin. Is Harold here? All right, so if Harold arrives just in the nick of time, we'll get him up here otherwise. Then I'm going to read some remarks by Les Heltzer, who was not able to be here. Then Ken Speckler, Ken West, and then if no one else jumps up, we're going to close the show out with remarks from Kathy. All right. So, all of us are unique in our own ways. Every individual is unique. I think anybody who met my father would admit that he was a little more unique than most. He just had his own way of doing things. And I think to outsiders, the way he would do things would seem a little strange sometimes, or maybe inefficient, or to use a technical term, ass backwards. But he could make it work. When my dad set his mind to do something, like something that really mattered to him, he would get it done, no matter what the obstacle was. He had a kind of tenacity to him, like a determination that just could overcome whatever was in his path. And despite feeling like the cards were always stacked against him, I think I heard him say, "Can't catch a break," maybe 1,000,000 times. He was fundamentally generous and loving to everyone around him. I'm going to give you guys some biography, so we're not having any religious component here. So this is a bit of the highlights from the story of my dad's life. He was born on April 18th, 1944, and he was considered an unruly and restless child and somewhat ill-disciplined. He struggled with schoolwork, especially reading, and was viewed as a poor student. And we now have medical terms for what he was coping with, and that's dyslexia and hyperactivity attention deficit disorder. But in the 1950s, when he was growing up, those conditions weren't really recognized, much less treated or given accommodations in school. So my dad got used to being considered badly behaved and honestly called dumb. He learned to rely on himself and trust his own instincts. A mantra that he said to himself a lot was that nobody could be wrong that much. Sports became a refuge for him. He had great stories about going to Griffith Stadium to watch the Senators, including this one story where his sister, Elaine, was babysitting him. And I think he was around 10 or 11 at this point, so his sister would have been 17 or 18. He convinced her to take him to a Senators game at Griffith Stadium. And as soon as he got there, he thought he saw his brother in the crowd, and he just took off. Got lost in the crowd. The person he thought was his brother wasn't actually his brother, but by pure coincidence, he then ran into his brother a little bit later. They looked for Elaine, they couldn't find her, and so she went home thinking that she had lost her baby brother. Bobby and my dad stayed and watched the game, of course, and when they went home, they stopped at the end of the streetcar line right by their house, had an ice cream stand, and my Uncle Bobby, knowing that my dad was going to be in big trouble when he got home, stopped and gave him some ice cream. And of every part of that story, that's the one that my dad remembers the most, is the ice cream. So my dad's love of sports, I think he looked at it as offering a kind of possibility of a fair fight. And that really appealed to him, because he, like I said, he did feel like the cards were stacked against him. He became an avid Redskins fan. Before that was cool. He got season tickets in the 60s, and then kept them for over 50 years. And also he refused to call them the Commanders. I had so many arguments with him about this, but he was just obstinate about it. So I am, in his honor, referring to them as the Redskins. But the Senators, then the Nationals, the Capitals, the Wizards, he followed all the local teams. And no matter what, he complained that the refs and the TV announcers were just always biased against the team. Despite that, and no matter how bad the teams actually got, he was always optimistic that they were going to do well the next year, especially the Redskins. He thought they were Super Bowl bound, even in the darkest depths of the Dan Snyder era. He also loved Notre Dame. He grew up, following Notre Dame, all the lore and the legend. And when I was growing up, I didn't like teams that were considered the favorites, so I would root against them, also just to be, kind of a jerk. And the last laugh was on me because I ended up going there for graduate school. And so I became a fan, and which I think if you like football and you go to Notre Dame, there's no way to avoid it. And my dad eventually started coming to games with me. Once a year, he and Kathy would come out, and I was living in Chicago by then, and we would drive to Notre Dame Stadium and watch games, and that was a lifelong dream of his. So we did that for a bunch of years. Really happy about that. So it wasn't just watching sports, though. He was a soccer player, and I think the soccer field is where he actually found himself as a youngster. He excelled at both being a goalkeeper and a striker, which is unusual. And he found himself as the only Jewish kid at an Episcopal boarding school in Hagerstown, Maryland, known as St. James. And it was a rough experience for him. He learned to fight there. That's how he said he became socially conditioned. And he had to deal with the teachers trying to convert him regularly. But on the soccer field, he didn't have any obstacles at all. And he was a star, and it was a place where he knew that he had value and he could show it. And when he told me stories about soccer from the St. James era, it was just all glory. I mean, my dad could tell a story. I think we all know that, right? And the stories, would often become more cinematic over time, I think, is the right way to put that. But the ones about soccer were all good. So after high school, my dad tried college. He went to Babson in Massachusetts for a semester and then decided it wasn't for him. And he came back to DC and he went to work at his father's business, Irving's Sports Shops. And if you're of my generation or the one before me, you know that Irving Sports Shops was the sporting goods store in the entire Washington area. Almost 30 stores, I think, at its height. And he has a lot of positive things to say about his experience there. There were times when he didn't feel like he was listened to as much as he would wanted to have been. And in a dramatic move, he ended up leaving Irving's and opening his own sporting goods store, a competitor to the family business called Sports Zone. And I don't know the details about how well the store did on its own, but I do know that my dad thought that scaling up was the key to success. And he opened a second store and then was in the process, I believe, of looking for a third when the bottom fell out and he had to shut down. And obviously that was really hard for him. But one of the things that he did, and he was really proud of this, was as soon as he realized that the business was going to have to shut down, he called the vendors that he had dealt with, and he told them to stop all of the orders that were in process. And he said that a lot of times businesses, when they're going bankrupt, when they're going out of business, I should say, they'll take all of the product they can get so they can sell it and then just sort of stiff the vendors. And he was adamant about not doing that. And he called the vendors and he said, stop the orders. And he also said, he also started negotiating how he could get as much to them as he could. Couldn't pay the full bill, but he wanted to make sure that as much money went to the vendors as opposed to the lawyers that would be needed if he declared bankruptcy and there were conflicts. And so apologies to the many lawyers in the room because this is Washington, D.C. But he didn't declare, so he shut down Sports Zone without declaring bankruptcy. And that was something that he was extremely proud of. So that was in the mid-'80s. And my dad's marriage to my mom ended around the same time as the business went out. My mom and my dad, they had started dating in the spring of 1969, and they were married by the end of September of that year. And very, very quick engagement period. My sister came a couple years later, and then I came almost exactly 2 years after that. And I like to joke that my sister and I are both born exactly 9 months after my dad's birthday. And it's true. All right, I'll say more about what it was like to have my dad. What can you say? Facts are facts, right? All right, I'll say more about what it was like to have my dad as a father in a bit. But one thing I want to note here is that both of our parents, did all they could to insulate us from the relationship difficulties that they had both before the divorce and after the divorce. And it's hard to imagine two people being as cordial with each other after a divorce as our parents were. And I think it's an instance of how my dad prioritized his children's welfare above his own feelings. And that, I think, is a common theme of what my dad's parenting was like. What followed the divorce and the business shutting down was probably my dad's lowest point, both professionally and personally. He wandered through some odd jobs and questionable business ventures. The most memorable of which that I know of was investing in the Redskins rap video. I think it was called "Thanks to the 12th Man," and you can find it on YouTube. And it is so cringe. It really is. The hope was that the Redskins were going to at least make the Super Bowl. You win it would be great, but he thought that if they made the Super Bowl, there would just be, thousands of these tapes, these VHS tapes sold throughout the whole region, and he was gonna hit it big. And we made it to the NFC Championship game, and we were playing the Giants. And if you remember, the Giants were really good that year. And they went up 17-0 at halftime. And he was so nervous that he popped open a bottle of B&B, which is some really awful liquor. I don't know exactly what it is, but by the end of the game, which we lost 17-0, he had drank the whole bottle. And I found him on the floor of the bathroom after he had, after some things had returned from whence they'd come. And that's actually the only time in my life that I ever saw my dad drunk. And he was totally cleaned up by the time we woke up. Like, we left him on the ground. We left him on the floor. We were, I was 13 and you were 15 or something. I don't know if my sister remembers any of this. What's that? Yeah. Anyway, he was fine by the next morning, and that's the only time I ever saw him drunk. I can only imagine what things were like for my dad during that time. He had, like I said, his childhood had involved a lot of people doubting him and underestimating him, and I can only imagine if during those couple years, if he started to wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe people who thought that he was, incompetent and wrong about everything. Maybe he wondered whether they were right. And then something happened that completely changed his entire world. He went to a singles party in 1987, and he met Kathy. And that was in the spring of 1987, and by the end of September, they were married. So my dad definitely had a style of courtship. It's hard to imagine two people better suited for each other than Kathy and my dad. They supported each other, they loved each other, they helped each other grow in all the best ways. And with Kathy, my dad experienced a kind of flourishing that he had never known before. He learned to love travel, he learned to love theater, and most importantly, finally, he found long-term success in business. Kathy and my dad just fit together incredibly well, meshing and interlacing as if they had been built for that all along. In 1989, my dad purchased a service station at the northern edge of Bethesda at the corner of Wisconsin Avenue and Battery Lane. And this is despite my dad having no prior experience in that industry. The business did fine, but fine wasn't good enough for my dad. He wanted more, and so he conceived of this bold plan to buy the land that the station sat on and the plot of land next door to it, which had an office building on it with medical stuff. That's where my dentist was. And to tear it down, and in its place to put a totally reconfigured station with a car wash and a convenience store and service bays. And in kind of an unprecedented thing for a service station, he wanted the office to be on the second floor. So this is a gas station with a second floor. People told him that he couldn't do it. It couldn't be done, and he didn't listen. So the many people who told him it couldn't be done ended up being wrong. And after many ups and downs, he managed to do it. He and Kathy, I should say. And Kathy provided some pretty critical support and advice, and especially legal counsel. And my dad loved to tell people at the beginning of negotiations that he slept with his lawyer. So they better watch out. And I think he's right. And I will say, I have also availed myself of a lot of free legal advice from Kathy. And it's very good if you can get it. In 1996, Kathy's son and my stepbrother Ian joined the business, and it became a family business at that time. And together they built it into a thriving business. The station did really well. And then ultimately they closed it in 2020 and sold the land in a deal that I think they were all very happy with. And I know the station's success was really validating for my dad. And I think he viewed it as proof, basically, that the people who had been naysaying him were just wrong, and that the belief he had in himself was justified. And he did it his way, this characteristic way of creativity, surprise, the unexpected, and let's be clear, the dramatic. My dad knew some drama, whether intentional or not. All right, so that's some biography for my dad, and other people will fill in some of the gaps that I've left. My dad is a parent. When I think about my dad, what kind of parent he was, the thing that stands out most is that the approach that he took was really about, hello? Okay, came back. Was really about us, the kids. He gave us love freely, truly, unconditionally. He didn't try to live vicariously through us. He didn't worry about how what we did reflected on him. He gave us the freedom to do our own thing, to be our own people, not dependent on him for validation or self-esteem. He was the kind of parent who made it easy to take him for granted, which, in my opinion, is an extraordinary gift for a parent to give. All right, one of my strongest memories of my dad from childhood regards how, this is going in and out, isn't it? What's that? Very briefly. All right, you might be thankful for that in a second. That's foreshadowing. All right, one of my strongest memories of my dad from our childhood regards how he would get my sister and myself out of bed in the morning. He didn't yell, he didn't make threats, he wouldn't make demands. He would sing. Terribly. A happy song. It was psychological warfare, if I'm being honest. I'm sure Alexis and I will both remember the song till we take our own very last breaths. And now I'm going to give it to you. Good morning, best to you each morning. Let a happy daddy brighten up your day. Let a happy daddy brighten up your day. He would just keep repeating it over and over and over again until we would get out of bed. And we would like groan really theatrically, and then we would get up because, good God, we wanted him to stop. I always thought he made this song up like entirely on his own. And so while I was preparing this, I decided just to Google it and see, you know, has anybody sang the Happy Daddy song before? Does anybody recognize it, by the way, the jingle? Oh, maybe, yeah. You probably got it too. It's from a Kellogg ad, like a Kellogg cereal in the 50s. And I think their tagline was like, brighten up your day or something like that. Anyway, the Happy Daddy part was all his. Kellogg wasn't into that. All right, so I played soccer myself, and my dad was always the coach of my teams, I think, except for the very first time. So for like 10 years, my dad coached my soccer teams. And he did it throughout the 80s when his business was struggling, when his marriage was struggling, and there was never a question. He just made time for it, and he was there. And I have some pretty indelible memories of my dad as a coach. The biggest one is this. Take a lap! Like, anytime the team was lagging, the focus, or wasn't listening to him, it was, take a lap! That's what I remember. I also remember him being really animated on the sidelines during games in a way that I was mortified by as a kid. Like, it was just embarrassing. Like, my dad was just arms waving and yelling at the refs, and I don't know. Now I just look back on that and I just smile. Like, that was so my dad. I saw him yelling at the refs at the TV, as an adult, and I was like, that was what was happening on the sideline. As I'm sure you guys all know, my dad loved to tell stories. One of his favorites about my childhood exemplifies the parenting style that he employed pretty well. And it went like this. So I was in middle school and I was going through my own unruly phase. This one time, so I was like in 7th grade, my Spanish class took a field trip to a dinner theater in the Washington area to see the performance of Evita. And like, if you're in middle school, musical theater is not, at least it wasn't my jam. So we just messed around during the whole performance. And one of my things was to take the paper napkins and throw them at people. And then I got the bright idea to let one of the paper napkins that wasn't rolled up at all, get too close to the candle that was lit on the table, because back then we had fully lit actual burning candles. And the thing caught on fire and made a big flame and then went out. And it wasn't a big deal, but it really freaked one of the other students out. So they told on me to the teacher. And then a week later, my dad told me that the fire marshal had called him and wanted to see me. And I was like, what? Because I didn't even really remember it. And so we went he brought me to the fire marshal's a place, and he apparently was going to take me to a room with a light that was hanging down, but it was being used. So he just took me over to his office area, and he sat me down and he Mirandized me. And which, immediately I was like, what the heck is going on here? And then he started asking me these crazy questions like do I light fires in the backyard? And do I torture small animals? And it scared the living crap out of me. And so I was like, no, I'm sorry. And I never lit another napkin on fire after that. And I was definitely better behaved. And my dad, years later, admitted to me that he had called the fire marshal and had arranged the whole thing. The Spanish teacher had called him, in my mind, it was like they called the principal, and the principal called the fire marshal, and they did this investigation, and I was in deep trouble. My dad he got called by the teacher and called the fire marshal and asked if the fire marshal would do this to me. This is what he wanted. And he was so proud of it. And I remember when he told me that, I was like, this is in my mid-20s or something. I just thought, man, you just outsource the parenting like that. Come on. I just wanted to criticize him, right? What I've come to realize, though, is that what he wanted there was for me to learn from my own mistake. He didn't want to tell me what I did wrong, right? He didn't want to make it about him and about his rules. He didn't want to risk, I think, me feeling like his love depended on how well behaved I was. It was just a way in which I think he tried to craft this sort of incubator of independence for me. The story looks different to me now than it did back then. I still wish he had, told me sooner, maybe. But I respect the desire to help me be independent. My dad's sense of family was powerful and inclusive. I think anyone who got close to him can sense that. Once you were on the team, you were really on the team, and he was really on the team with you. In 2018, my husband, Todd, died of brain cancer, and he was 46 at the time. And Todd and I had gotten married just the year before, after he'd gotten sick. We did it primarily for legal and medical reasons. We didn't even invite anybody. We didn't tell anyone we were doing it. We just went and did it. And we'd been together for 12 years at that point. And so it was, the marriage itself was really just a legal nicety for us. At my dad's memorial service, we're at my dad's memorial service now, at Todd's memorial service, my dad got up, I went and I watched this again, and he said this. He said, long before Todd and Brandon got married, he had become our son-in-law. And, it's obvious what he was saying, right? He was making clear that he considered Todd to be part of the family and that he had done so for a long time. And it was a really beautiful moment, and everybody, it impacted them in the way he had intended. But for me, what was really special about that is sort of how unremarkable it was. How unremarkable beyond the beauty of the sentiment, right? It wasn't a surprise to me that he felt that way. I never doubted that he felt that way about Todd. I had come out to my dad in 1994, and it wasn't crazy then, right? It was, I'm sure to the young kids here today, they're like, whoa, that must have been the dark ages. How did you get shot on your way out? No, people were coming out to their family then, but a lot of people were getting still turned away by their family or having to deal with a lot of judgment or a lot of anger. And I didn't get any of that from my dad. My dad never showed me anything but love and acceptance. And I know how lucky I am for that. I have known a lot of gay people in my life, and I can probably count on one hand the people who had it like that. My dad and I, we just never had any strife. We never had any conflict, not over anything important. And I know how lucky I am about that too. My dad and I were different in a lot of ways. We connected mostly over sports, or most strongly, I should say, over sports. And I think for a long time I thought that we didn't have a whole lot in common beyond that. But over the years, I've seen more and more how wrong I was about that. Like my dad, I am sentimental. I value connection over conflict. I make a point of accepting people as they are rather than trying to change them. And I celebrate people finding strength where they didn't even know they had it. And I know how he came to those values. I mean, he was fighting against people's doubts and judgments his whole life and vowing not to treat others the same way. And I came to those values differently. I came to them because I was his son, because of who he was and because of how he chose to parent. And I couldn't have asked for anything more from a father. And I didn't have to ask, because he gave me all the love he had so entirely freely. And I just want to say, Dad, thank you, and I love you. Uncle Bobby, I now welcome you to the podium.
Thank you. Just thank you all for coming, and just short and sweet. Donald and I had a lot in common. We both are pretty bad boys in school. We both are pretty bad boys in school. Like that? That better? Louder? Okay. Anyway, we both were pretty bad boys in school. And I think we had Ritalin back in those days. I might have gone to one school instead of about 10. But that's beside the point. But Donald was a good guy, had a great heart, loved his family, and we all loved him. Our sister Elaine's in Florida right now, and she would have loved to come up today, but unfortunately, her husband's 95, and it's hard for him to travel, but he's in good shape. But she sends her love to everybody. And I just want to say, make a toast to Donald and say, you know, he was a great guy. I loved him. And he talked about his business group all the time, talked about his friends all the time. And Donald, I'm going to miss you. Love you. Here, here.
Ian, would you like to come up next?
Hi, everybody. First of all, I'd like to say that thank you for everybody for being here, and it just shows the bonds and relationships that Don had built by a room, you know, overflowing with people who love and cared about him so much. So thank you, everybody, for being here. It really shows to Don's character, you know, everybody that showed up here and the way that everybody loved Don. And, you know, there's not too much more that I can say. Brandon did such a great job in, you know, talking about Don and his life and his character and his devotion to family and relationships and friends and his just general acceptance of people, you know, and he was very driven and motivated in business, but he really, you know, was pretty selfless and would do anything for the people around him. Don came into my life when I was around 15 years old, when he met my mom, who, you know, Brandon did a great job in describing their relationship and the great fit for each other. And, you know, looking back and having a family of my own now, you know, I understand how difficult it was to, you know, mend our families, to mend our families together. And, you know, I was not the easiest child at that time, moving on for a little bit, you know. But I'll tell you, he loved me, you know, from the beginning, and he welcomed me into the family, which is, you know, like the reoccurring theme when you talk about Don, is like the welcoming, inclusive, way about him. And, as kids, me and Brandon and Alexis were all very immensely different at the time. And he had his own way of parenting us in a like sort of separate but not equal kind of way because we all needed what we needed at the time. And like I said, as a parent now, I can understand how challenging that must have been, and I know, obviously from the results, because we all turned out good in the end, of what a success that he had. He was always there. He always, and I'm going to keep saying Brandon touched on it because he really did, but he just showed up for everything. He was there for all of our lives, for anything that happened in our lives, whether it was graduation or grandkids or birth of children or whatever. He was just always there and always present and supporting, and it meant so much. After me kind of going out on some adventures over the years, some wild adventures in my early youth, I came back and I needed some direction, and he welcomed me into his business that he had built, and I still, we butted heads at first, or I butted heads. I thought I knew something about something when I was in my early 20s, and I came to find out that I didn't. And he was so patient and loving, and just he put up with a lot, and I'm so grateful for him. And turns out now that my father passed away when I was real little, and so Don was, basically the only father I ever knew, for a long time. And I'd like to say that everything I learned about life and business, was from him. And we worked together for 25 years, which is challenging. It's challenging enough to work with anybody for 25 years, more or less family. But we made it work, and by the end of it all, we were best friends. Whether it was sports, we loved to go to the Caps games together, the Redskins, Commanders, whatever they are, games together, and just talk, just hang out and all that. And then, when I met my wife Ferme, he in the same vein that he always was, welcomed her into the family. Welcomed her children into the family, our children now, and it was just wonderful. And one thing about Don that I was thinking about was that, with Brandon describing the way that Don felt growing up, he always kind of looked out for the underdog, and people that were, having trouble or whatever they were going through. He always seemed to be there for them, and loving them. And I'll tell you, he treated my mother like a queen, and he loved her so much, and he doted over her, and just whatever she needed, he was always there for her. And he loved kids, especially his grandkids. And it was the same thing. He showed, every school event or dance recital or piano recital or whatever, him and my mom were there for. And one of the things that I was thinking about that he used to do was he always had this like big stash of stuffed teddy bears that he kept in his office. And whenever anybody, any acquaintance, like a vendor of ours, would have a kid, or anybody we knew had kids, he always would like give him this teddy bear and then these handwritten like notes about, hi, you know, I'm such a teddy bear and blah, 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 and tell a story to the kids. And when we were closing down the business, I remember, you know, one of our vendors, you know, had said to me like, you know, oh, you know, 15 years ago when I had my child, I remember Don gave my kid this teddy bear and this note, and it just always stuck out in my heart. That was just like a little token of the stuff that Don did every day. You know, and he was just a wonderful guy. And in business, you know, I mean, there were some tough times in there. It was hard, you know, and anybody that knew him during those times knew how challenging it was for us. And I've never met anybody as determined with the perseverance that he had to keep moving forward and like, you know, my mom talks about it like finding a new way to solve the puzzle of the challenge that's in front of us. And he was tenacious, you know, and it just kept pushing forward. And he was just such a kind person. I loved him so much. He showed me so much about life, and I can't speak enough for the friendship, you know, and the relationship that we had. And I think, and I talked about it in the beginning, but it's just a testament to him with everybody, with you all here, you know, and everybody, you know, all the overwhelming phone calls and text messages and people who have come out of the woodwork to talk about how much they love Don, because he was just such a great guy and such a unique character. You know, I mean, everybody that knew him knew that, you know, he was one of a kind, and he's truly going to be missed by me. So that's about all I got to say. But I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks.
Ian's being a little modest about one thing, I should say. He literally saved my dad's life one time. If there's time later, I'll tell you that story. Otherwise, feel free to ask Ian about it.
Thank you. All right. Can't be upstaged by the brothers. So, I love listening to this. Unlike my dad, this social creature, I just want to go into a corner and lick my wounds and be quiet and alone. So it's kind of nice to hear everybody talk about him because it's bringing me back to reality, to remember this is about him and what he would want, and this would make him really happy. But in listening to all of these things about people who knew my dad and how they knew him, that's not how I remember him. I remember him exactly how he was. Perfect, strong, always had the right answer, always knew what to do, could fix the car, could tell me what needed to be done. He was always my hero, still my hero. There was a time that I spent a lot of time with my dad and had this close relationship that never changed. And it was interesting. I mean, how many adult men have to raise a 16-year-old girl without having anyone to ask the answers to? Oh, and who was very demanding of the answers. And he survived that. Lessons learned from my dad. Those of you that knew him well will see this. Wanted me to be strong. He wanted me to be independent. He wanted me to be whatever I could be, whatever I wanted to be. And he said, these are things you need to do. You need to learn how to drink black coffee. None of this latte, creamer, sugar, because you never know when you're going to be driving in the middle of the night in a snow blizzard, in the middle of nowhere, and the only thing open is a gas station with plain black coffee. So I drank black coffee. Do you know how hard it is to get a plain black coffee anywhere now? I stare at the Starbucks menu and I don't know how to order. He said, you need to learn how to change a tire. You can do this. I said, great. Taught me how to do it. Then I actually had to change a tire. He didn't tell me about the part that I'd have to climb into the trunk to actually get the spare out. And then it all goes downhill when you realize there are lug nuts that are put on with an air gun. Still having to flag somebody down to get that tire changed. Taught me how to enjoy a beer, watch football, and talk smack all at the same time. Sorry. So now my family has to deal with that. But the lessons that I learned from him that will never go is how he was always there for me. He always had the right answer in my mind. He saw things in such a positive way. And I was describing him to a coworker, and the coworker said to me, God, I hope my kids look at me the way you look at your dad. So my parting thought to everybody is, I hope everybody has a child that looks at them the way that I looked at my dad and that I still think about him. And I talk to him all the time. And now he can't answer back. So I get the last word, finally. I love you, Dad.
All right. Welcome, Callie Carpentieri, my dad's granddaughter.
Hi. Yeah, as Uncle Brandon said, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Callie. I'm one of Donald's, or as all the grandkids called him, Dee's granddaughter. I'm going to try to get through this without crying, but I'm not as strong as everybody else who's spoken so far, and I'm emotional. But I just wanted to say a few short words about what kind of grandfather Dee was and how much he meant to me. Dee was the kind of grandfather that was always there for us. He was there less than a day after I was born. He was there for every birthday he could attend, every holiday, every dance recital, every graduation, and considering I lived thousands of miles away in Florida, that was very impressive. He wasn't just there in the physical sense. He was so present in every moment that he was there with us, giving all of us his attention, his listening ears, his advice, his stories, and boy, were there a lot of great stories. He was also the kind of grandfather that was silly and fun. He would play games with us, make jokes, and was always ready for an adventure. For my siblings and I, many of those adventures came in the form of an annual Disney trip that Nan and Dee would take us on each year. It's a trip that I would look forward to every single year, not just because we got to go to Disney, but because we got to go to Disney with Nan and Dee. They brought the true magic to those trips. Dee had a sort of childlike wonder that stayed with him throughout his life, and I got to witness a lot of it on these trips, especially as we watched the Lion King show together, went on Soarin' together, and even when he took a baby nap on It's a Small World. My mom would always say that one of us had to be holding a grandparent at all times. Hold on, I need to blow my nose, guys. So sorry. I don't have a tissue. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Chana. It's very sweet, thank you. Like I said, guys, I'm emotional. My mom would always say that one of us had to be holding a grandparent at all times, mostly because one year we did lose Nan for a brief time. When she followed the wrong tall man in a baseball cap, that wasn't my dad. But the truth is that we didn't need to be told. We wanted to be with them. I wanted to sit next to Dee as we went on another roller coaster that I knew he only went on with me to make me happy. For each of those roller coasters, there would inevitably be a huge drop that we would go up, and every single time, without fail, each and every year, he would always tell me when we got to the top, what goes up must come down. Those trips together are truly some of the most happiest memories of my life, and I'm really grateful for them. I could honestly go on and on forever if I talked about all the great memories that I have with Dee. He was the kind of grandfather and the kind of person who was generous, who was loving, who was kind, and who was patient. I always saw him with a smile on his face. Every time I would call, no matter what he was going through, he always answered with such an optimistic personality. I never doubted that he loved me and was proud of me. I just only hope that he knew how much I loved him and was proud of him too. I'll be spending the rest of my life missing him and wishing he was here for every moment like he always was. But I'm really grateful for the time I got with him. And I know that all of us will keep his spirit and his love and never let it be forgotten. So Dee, if you're listening, thank you for everything. I love you. I'm okay.
I welcome David Parks and his mother, I think, onto the...
Thanks, Brandon. I was doing fine until Callie. I'm David Parks. I am Donnie's nephew. My mom, Elaine, Bobby just spoke about. She's on. I've been FaceTiming her on this, so she's with us semi in person. I'm the oldest of our generation of first cousins. This group here, Brandon and Alexis and Ian and my brothers, Mike and Andrew. What Uncle Donnie to us, what he taught me wasn't about being a father, it was how to be an uncle, which basically meant how to come to a family dinner with your grandparents and your parents and your aunts and uncles, wreak mayhem as much as you could, rile up the kids, your sister's kids, your brother's kids, and then leave and say, have fun cleaning up my mess. Which I've taken to heart and tried desperately hard to do with my brother, both my brother's kids. And because those are some of the fondest memories I have of being a kid, being tickled to literal death, almost from somebody much bigger than me. When I was 10, I made a comment to Donnie about how old he was. I guess he was probably around 26 at the time. And he said, you know, you better be careful because someday you're going to catch up with me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're older than me. You're going to always be older than me. He said, right now, I'm more than twice your age. I said, right. He said, but when you're 30 and I'm 46, I will no longer be twice your age. You will have closed that gap. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, it made total sense to me. He totally sold that, and I thought someday I'm going to be the same age as Uncle Donnie. So it was that kind of spirit that he continued to be a great uncle and friend to us. He always made sure to use his me being younger, his size and his weight, his strength against us. And we would go swimming in my grandparents' pool in Annapolis. And it was a kidney-shaped pool with a shallow end and a very steep drop-off to the deep end. And we would wrestle, and ultimately he would dunk me because he was so much bigger and stronger than me. Until he wasn't. And I was taller than him, and I realized that if I maneuvered him towards the deep side, he could not have any leverage over me. And the first time I actually dunked him, and he was crying foul, everything, like all the things that he used to do to me went out the window. And so I got that one victory, and then I decided I should probably just keep letting him win a little bit longer so I didn't make him feel bad about being shorter than me. But Donnie was great. He would take us to Redskins games, so many fond memories, taught us how to tailgate and how to enjoy the game, how to criticize everything at the game. I think he probably could have had a successful career as a coach. I know certainly he would have loved to give some of the Redskins coaches his 2 cents because he was not shy of sharing them to everyone else. The last thing I kind of want to say is Brandon's speech reminded me of a lot of things about Donnie and how I reflected on them. I was a soccer player, as were my brothers and Brandon, and I would hear these stories about what an amazing soccer player he was and all his soccer knowledge. And you kind of, when I'm a teenager and in my 20s, I'm kind of like, yeah, I've never, I only hear it from him. I don't really know. And at one point, I had made the Virginia State soccer team. And the last minute, we lost our coach. And we were supposed to go to this national tournament, and we didn't have a coach. And so I thought, who do I know that could step in? And I called Uncle Donnie and I said, would you be willing to come coach our team? And without hesitation, he did. And he was a remarkable coach. He actually knew what he was talking about, and the guys all bound together and respected him. And it's not easy because these are players from all over the place. It's not a consistent team. And he coached us, and we went off to the tournament, and you know, we didn't win it, but we did fairly well. And my respect for him and his soccer knowledge really grew immensely from that. And he always was checking in on my career and how I was doing, and I very much appreciated that. Like all the others, there's so many stories I could share, but when I was a kid, my brothers and I, we just wanted to be our uncles. We thought there was nobody cooler. Food, anyone? There was nobody cooler in the world than Uncle Donnie and Uncle Bobby, and we still feel that way, and we'll always feel that way about him. And I know that right now, and this weekend, he'll be in his recliner watching the Commanders play, and no doubt has a strong opinion about Jaden Daniels starting this weekend. And win or lose, he never loses his spirit for the team and for his family and for us. So Uncle Donnie, we love you and we'll always remember you.
I'm going to welcome Bryce. Bryce, do you explain how we're related, or would you like me to do that for you?
It doesn't matter. We're cousins.
So Bryce and I are cousins, but on my mom's side. My dad and Summer is my cousin as well, Bryce's sister. Their mother, who I was not related to by blood, but was always my aunt for life. And my dad, the two of them stayed friends after they both divorced the siblings. And they would go on trips together annually to Stratford for the Shakespeare Festival. And Bryce and Summer have both stayed in my dad's life, and keeping a connection with them has been really important.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to give a little bit of perspectives as the youngest of all of the cousins. And especially when I was growing up, the four of us were raised really closely, especially spending a lot of time going down to our great-grandmother's place. And since I was the little pipsqueak runt, and Summer and Brandon were always off having adventures, I a lot of times were kind of left. I'm not cool enough. I'm not able to play in their games. But Donald was always there. Uncle Donald was always everything that my dad wasn't. He was rough and tumble, and he was fun. He never disciplined me, and he really just focused all on the fun and positivity. And that's something I needed. And especially when I was young, I started having a little bit of learning disability issues, same sort of thing that he had went through, except now they had names and treatments and things. And he's like, you can do this. Yeah, you're gonna do great things. And he was always super supportive. And it was always kind of odd of with these academic things of, my uncle cared. Cared enough to come to academic events and drive down to see things. And he was just always there. And he was always so giving and loving. And, I was worried when my aunt and Uncle Donald broke up. I was really scared that, I didn't really understand divorce. I didn't know about, separation, things like that, because, of course, I was the tiny little one of the group. But, he came to me and he explained, this is what's happening. And I had that question. Well, what does this mean? What does this change? And he's like, it changes nothing. I will always be your uncle. I will always be there. And he was. And he kept people in his heart. When later my dad and mom split, and they really had no relationship, they stayed together. They stayed as, family. And I will still cherish the time being able to go with Kathy and Uncle Donald, my mom, and be able to go to Stratford and enjoy plays and watch my uncle put up with shopping and plays and other things. And, I'd listen to him because I was the only person really not interested in all sports. Listen to sports. Still was shocked even to the last couple of times I talked to him. He knew what my college's team score was in football. I don't. Because he's like, oh, you guys did last week really well. And I'm like, No, I was cycling last week. I have no idea what you're talking about. But no, he did. He cared. And that's the thing. He cared about so many people. And he also was just there. And that's one of the things when I'm dealing with my nephews. I try to instill that same energy. And there are times where I'm thinking where I've got 3 boys hanging off of me. And I'm thinking about my knees. And I'm thinking about Uncle Donald with his knees that were bad and how I used to hang on him and use him as a jungle gym. But he never complained. He always was there just to be there. He always just loved us unconditionally, supported us, and never let us feel anything than true fun, happiness, and love. I'll always remember that, and I try to be like that. Thank you.
Hearing Bryce and David talk about how they interacted with their nephews, my dad never instructed me on how to be an uncle, but I completely took after him in the way that he treated you guys. My explicit goal in going to visit my sister's kids was to create as much chaos in their very orderly house as possible, and then leave. I now call one of my dad's closest friends, Steve Miller.
I'll make this as brief as possible. Siri, set the timer for 37 minutes. Brandon, if I should go over, Doc Kenny, debit his account. I've known Donnie since November of 1953. We were both cellmates at WHC Sunday School. We shared a lot of commonality in that Donnie wanted to be Eddie LeBaron. I wanted to be Eddie Fisher. A lot of folks don't get that. Anyway, we could do things like, we liked Pig Temple and Dog Lady. We both knew the lyrics to My Favorite Bread is Heidi, and I will sing it over there later on for y'all. And then we sort of parted company. Donnie went to St. James, and some of us went to NTS, aka Woodrow Wilson. And then we got together in the 2000s. Donnie and Billy Gordon put together a group of guys that we knew in high school and from WHC. And we had dinners every 6 to 8 weeks in Bethesda. And we called ourselves the J Crew, the original J Crew. It was a Liars Club, and we had such fun doing such things as listing all the girls that wouldn't go out with us. And unfortunately, it sticks in my head, and I'll start with Lois Colker, Cookie Schwartz, Judy Mandel, Phyllis Friedlander, Phyllis Kronheim, Nancy Kronheim, Dale Dreyfus, who actually took out a couple of years ago. Anyway, and we would talk about such things as, deep, serious, scintillating, titillating things like which magazine had better articles, Penthouse or Playboy? We were serious students. Mensa Light is more like it. Then I invited Donnie and Bobby Schroyer down to UVA football games about 20 years ago, and that was an annual occurrence. And after 1 or 2 years, my wife said to us, I've made arrangements for y'all to go to the faculty club at UVA, to go on the lawn and tailgate. And she said, the only thing I ask for you guys to do is not talk. Apparently that didn't go over well, so the next year I pleaded with her to do it again. And so what happened was, one of her students was the maitre d', and they put us in the furthest corner of the club, in the darkest section. And we sat down, and 3 students came out simultaneously, put these soup turreens on our plates. And they, again, simultaneously lift off the cover. And inside it was duct tape and a sign that said, don't talk. So, these are the boys, these are my friends. Donnie, me, Marvin Mostow, and Kenny. And I will always cherish Donnie and Kenny's and Marvin's friendship to infinity for them being with me during some of the darkest days of my life. Finally, I'd like to say that I don't know if you're aware of a UVA tradition, 4th year, streak the lawn. So if you read in this coming May, an octogenarian arrested for streaking the lawn, you've seen him fully clothed.
Thank you, Steve. Next, I'm going to call up Claire Fisher, and then after... yes, I can bring this to you. Claire, Claire, is there a chance you can come up here, because we're recording this? That'd be great. Thank you. And then after Claire, Harold Zirkin has arrived. Harold is here? Yes, over there, got it. And so Harold will be next. If anybody who has not let me know that they want to speak is feeling the call to, Richard? Is anybody else? Yes? I don't hear your name though. What's it?
My name is Yuka.
Yuka?
Yeah, I used to work for Fogel.
Okay, cool. Great. Is there anybody else?
If Donald can do it, I can do it. We all have different terms, but that's my go-to say. People are not going to want to hear me this loud, but anyway.
Yeah, they do. They all hear what you want to say.
I have a very loud voice, and I also...
You have to hold up to...
oh, sorry. Okay. Don's celebration of life can easily be called a celebration of a life well lived. We had such a wonderful time traveling with Don and Kathy. We were the sort of yin and yang couple. I had dyslexia. I went to a private school that didn't like me either. He went to an Episcopal school and he didn't like them either. My husband went to a Catholic school and he wasn't happy about that either. So we all have similar experiences. Don and I were the talkers. Kathy and Rich were quieter and tried to keep us in line, but good luck. We will miss Don a lot, and our thoughts and prayers are with all of the family. We are so blessed to have been included since we came into Don and Kat. Oh, sorry. We are so blessed to be here today, and so grateful that since we came into Don and Kathy's life rather late, we were included in this wonderful celebration, and we love them both so much, and we will miss the fun times. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm doing it again. We had. Kathy, this is for you. We want, and I have to read this because you know me. We want you to know that we are here. I'm sorry. We want you to know. Oops. We want you to. I'm sorry. We want you to know that we are here for you always, and no matter. Hold on, wait a second. I can't read with my eyes. Can't read. Read with them or without them. No one can fully understand another person's feelings, but I have to sort of feel for you right now that you may well feel as Abraham felt. Where am I going? I don't know. What are you doing? I have absolutely no idea. So Abraham is something that I look up to tell me when I'm not sure where I'm going. Hold on a minute. You taught us, Kathy, that all tours, Smithsonian, Gohagen, Mitchell Gallery, are really gelato tours. Don and Kathy were true friends. And, sorry, here we go. So whenever you are truly ready, we would love to take you for some gelato. Actually, we found a great place in Pasadena, believe it or not. And I have to say, Kathy is the true gelato entrepreneur. We ate more gelato in Sicily than any two people could ever eat in their entire lives. Oh, sorry. We ate more gelato in Sicily than any two people could eat in their entire lives. But we did it. So, hold on. We were so blessed. I know, I'm doing it again.
I'll hold it for you.
I'm sorry, I'm such a nut. But I have ability to have green hair because I'm so sort of unique, and that's why Don and I got along so well, because I was afraid to use the term, but I will. We are both extremely bullheaded and have caused multiple aggravations for our spouses at times, who have both been extremely patient with both of us. I remember one little time that, and I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but we were traveling and we were in Troy, and Kathy and Rich were going up and down the steps and wandering around. I've had disabilities all over the place, just like Don. I pushed the envelope too far because I insisted on doing what I wanted to do. And so we were sitting there. His knee was killing him. My legs were killing me. I had a boot and walking sticks, but we were still trucking it. And he has been a great inspiration. We will miss him very, very much. And we are honored that he blessed us with the gift of true friendship by sharing his feelings in a sad but beautiful call to let us know exactly what was happening in his life and to prepare us also for what we would be feeling. Thank you all, as I said before, for including us. And as I said, I talk a lot, but I've tried to be brief in reference to Kathy and just to let you know how much we appreciate it. Oh, and Brandon, I loved everything you said. I related 100%, and you made me chuckle the entire time because that was my life too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Did you say you met Donald in October and November of 1952?
3. I met you there too. You were in the 3rd cell.
Okay, September 1952. I entered for the first day the Longfellow School for Boys, and in 4th grade, I met Donald Fogel. We were in Mr. Freese's class. I would guess, with the exception of Bobby and Elaine and Carol Schumann, if she's here, there aren't many people who have known Donald longer than that. We spent 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade at Longfellow. He was a very good athlete for a young, smallish person. Good soccer player. He also played football and baseball. In junior high, I think he went to Deal. I unfortunately stayed at Longfellow, and then when he went to high school, he went off to St. James, where he created a wonderful group of friends, several of whom I still know. He went to Babson, graduated, came back to Washington. The most common element of our growing up was our frustration with Washington professional sports teams. We lived through Mickey Vernon, Eddie Yost, Eddie LeBaron, Jim Podoli, and I could go on until you'd all be bored. But they never won. They were just absolutely terrible. But Donald's father, Irving Fogel, had a sports store. And as I remember, he had a gentleman working for him. I think his name was Jose, but I could be wrong. Bobby says I'm right. And Jose knew some of the Cuban baseball players who had come up and played for the Washington Senators. Most of them were worthless, but there were 2, Emilio Pascual and Pedro Reynos, who were excellent pitchers, went on to Minnesota and won a World Series with Minnesota. But Donald was the envy of everybody his age who knew sports, because Emilio Pascual and Pedro Reynos were at Donald's bar mitzvah. So as sports went on, it brought another very interesting event to light that we shared together. The football team had been dreadful until George Allen came in, put together the Over the Hill gang. And the 3rd year he was here, I think we'd been to the playoffs at least once, if not twice, never did anything. But we were playing pretty well. And we had tickets to go to a Giant game. It was November 12th, to be exact. And we were presented with an interesting dilemma and you know, had to make a decision. Because a couple of days before the game, we were able to, we had an offer to go to Spain for the weekend. Yeah, we went for the weekend. We left Friday and came home Monday. But the deal was, if you go, you had to look at, you know, some apartments at the Costa del Sol. So, you know, we can go look, we don't like them, and that was that. But we decided to go, sat through bullfights. Linda and my wife were both pretty pregnant because this is November of 1972. I think Brandon was born in January of 73. And my daughter was born later in January of 73. So the ladies were pretty big then. And we were having a great time, and until we realized that the game was probably almost over, was over. And it became a major dilemma for us to figure out how the Redskins had done against the Giants. And we went to the office there, and don't forget, then we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phones, and if you wanted to make an international phone call, you had to go to an American Express office and make an appointment. And I don't think we ever did find out that night who won the game, but we were pretty happy the next morning as Larry Brown had scored 2 touchdowns, and the Redskins won. They were then 9-2, and they went on to win the championship game, which is the second act of this. The championship game was December 31st, obviously New Year's Eve. And at New Year's Eve, you go to parties. So we went to a function at Woodmont Country Club, and there were the 4 of us. We had guests, Nancy and Arthur Lazaro, and we also, I think John Zeller was there with us. He was. He was? Yeah, he was. And at that night, every other song that was played was Hail to the Redskins, because the Redskins had never done anything. Yeah, as a young man, as an older man, Donald had the biggest heart of almost anybody I knew. He would always do whatever he could to help anybody. If you needed a left arm, he'd give it to you. When he was running his business on Wisconsin Avenue, if you needed any help with your automobile, he was there. He would have his mechanics help you. He was just a wonderful, wonderful person who built up a very large camaraderie of good friends. Nice to see so many of you here today. So, Donald, I'll miss you. I'll remember you. You were part of my life. And I'm a better person for having known you for as long as I did. Thank you for letting me speak.
All right, we have an impromptu addendum from John Zeller.
It's Jose Carricky, by the way. I'm going to be real brief, and if you've got a calculator on your telephones, you can figure this one out. We were in a poker game, and Donald was probably, it was a very low-stakes, fun game, 7 of us, and you bought in for $20. If you won $20 or $30 or lost 10 or 15, it was a lot of money. This one particular night, Donald was a horrible poker player. Not bad, horrible. This one particular evening, he pulled a, if he had good hands, someone had better hands. If he had bad hands, everyone had better hands. This one night, I don't think he won a hand all night. At the end of the night, everyone counted up how much they won or lost. And person number 1, I won $10. Person number 2, well, I won $4. Person number 3, I won $6. Person number 5, I won $3. Person number 6, I won $7. Person number 7, Donald, I broke even.
Thanks, John.
Hey everyone, my name is Yurga. I used to work with Dan 2005 until 2020. So my testament is Dan used to treat everybody with dignity and respect, no matter what position you have. And he was selfless and very generous. That's all I can be witness, and we're gonna miss him. Thank you, guys.
So I'm Richard Chisholm. I've been privileged to work with Don and Kathy for about 25 years, and first met Don late 90s as part of a networking group, some members of which are here today in his honor. And quickly that turned into a series of lunches. And then the next thing you know, it was a series of dinners with Don and Kathy. And one thing led to another. We began doing some business together, and they invited my wife Yvette and I to a restaurant on Connecticut Avenue. And apparently when Don and Kathy were dating, there was a reference by Don to life being a roller coaster. And this dinner was Don's invitation to me to get on the roller coaster with he and Kathy while we decided what to do with this station. Well, he decided what he was going to do with the station. And for the next 15 years, I guess, there were the continuing back and forth efforts, negotiations to sell his station. And it was an amazing roller coaster ride. There were so many ups and downs. To echo what others have said, Don was nothing if not persistent. He was nothing if not goal-oriented. He knew what he wanted. There were times when I and other advisors would be like, hey, this is a good deal. This is a good term. No, he knew what he wanted, and he was going to go get it. So along those 15 years, the dinners increased, lunches were ongoing, and Don was famous. Nobody's mentioned this yet. I'm kind of surprised. Nobody's mentioned the barbecue ribs. Don was famous for his barbecue ribs dinners. And I will never forget, yeah. If you know, you know. In 2011, my wife and I were privileged to go to France with Don and Kathy, and that was just an amazing trip. The ending was a little bit problematic in certain respects, and again, if you know, you know. But it was just an honor and privilege to know Don and to know Kathy throughout their entire lives. And may his memory be a blessing, as I know it will be for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, we've got just a few more friends, and then we're going to hear from a couple more grandkids, and then we're going to close out the show with Kathy. One of my dad's oldest and closest friends, Les Heltzer, fell and broke a vertebra a couple days ago and is unable to be here today. So he sent me something that he asked me to read out for him. And here's what he sent. No pretense, no artifice, the real deal and a true friend and family. He did not know how to whine. He did not know how to whine. That is what he said. He was accepting and always forward-looking. You know what? The age is catching up with me. Wait till I get older, even older. Our three sons called him Uncle Donald. He more than occasionally referred to me as his other brother. Every couple of months, I'd get a call from him, which was intended for Bobby. I sensed that since when I'd say hello, he'd start off saying, Bobby, and I'd reply, nope, it's Les, your other brother. We could talk to each other openly about anything as we did in our many breakfast/lunch times together. After I began coaching youth soccer, I used to go to Brandon's soccer games, coached by Donald, to learn more about soccer and make it seem for the kids and parents on my teams like I knew the game. Well, after several years, I asked Donald to be my, quote, assistant coach, and we spent many exciting and fun years coaching together. One of the more One of the more important things I learned from watching Donald coach his own team was that he was great with the kids, but not so much with the parents. And I sensed that Donald recognized that. Before agreeing to help, he had one condition, namely that I, not he, would deal with the parents. You can only imagine how quickly I agreed. A while ago, I asked Kathy whether there was anyone who didn't like Donald. We came up with just 2. Relax, I've checked the guest list and neither of them are here. When the kids were young, Ruth would line up our 3 sons for haircuts at home. When Ruth finished the 3rd haircut, Donald sprightly leaped up to Ruth and shouted, "I'm next." It was a tradition that continued on for some 5 decades. To Kathy, Alexis, Paul, Brandon, Ian, Bobby, and Elaine, may you always feel the love and warmth of Donald's bone-crushing hugs. That's Les Helzer. And Ken Speckler, call you up here. And then Ken West, you'll be next. The 2 Kens, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. First of all, in view of all the people that are here and everything that's been said by a number of the folks here, there's not a whole lot for me to say. We all know what a wonderful guy that Don was. And I'm here, and normally it's a thing that you always want to hear to say goodbye, and I don't want to say goodbye. I'm not going to say goodbye to Don. I will maybe go home and at times ask him a question and maybe go along with his answer or maybe not. The one thing I know I'm not going to do is I'm not going to do wrestling with him or any of that sort of thing, or boxing or anything because of what others have said here. But I want everybody to know that in the 12 or 15 years that Maureen and I have known Don, it's been a real high point in my life, what I've learned from him and what I think he's also given to a lot of others here, including his family, who he cherished above almost anything in the world. His wife and his wife and his children. And all I can say is thank you, Donald, and we'll be talking.
Kathy, this celebration is an amazing testament to your husband's memory. My name is Ken West. I met Donald at Alice Steele Junior High School, which as some of us know is on the correct side of the park. But we didn't reconnect until 50 or 60 years later. He had his business, the gas station, and our law firm began to represent his business. Donnie and I began to have lunch together on Fridays about 6 or 7 years ago, and we would discuss current events, family, and tall tales. And I recall 3 of the stories that Donnie told me. The first is when he was an adolescent, his brother Bobby would bring a girl home on Saturday night and go into a room. Donnie would surreptitiously peek into the room. So you really introduce your brother to the first steps of the facts of life. The second, his gas station business had a problem. I'm not sure what it was, but he had somehow arranged a conference with Louis Goldstein, who was the comptroller of the state of Maryland. And the night before the meeting, he told his father, and his father, Irving, said, "Well, tell Louis Goldstein that I said hello." So Donnie went to Goldstein's office the next morning. The secretary said, "Sir, you have 1 minute with the comptroller." So he walked in, shook his hand, and said, "Mr. Goldstein, my father, Irving Fogel, asked me to say hello." Goldstein smiled, said, "Irving is your father? I could tell you tales about him, but I don't think he'd want me to repeat them." Goldstein then turned to an aide and said, "Whatever this young man wants, give it to him." The third story has some historical significance. When Donnie was working with you at your father's shop, he got a call from the White House. President Kennedy wanted a set of golf clubs for a foreign dignitary who was visiting. Donnie said, "Well, excuse me, you didn't pay, the White House didn't pay for the last set of golf clubs, so you're not getting them." A few minutes passed. Donnie gets a call from the Secretary of the Attorney General of the United States. "Sir, the Attorney General pays his brother's bills. An FBI agent will be by in about an hour with a check. How much are you owed? And please deliver the clubs to the White House." He was paid and the clubs were delivered. So many people have said such wonderful things about Donnie, and I don't want to repeat them. But he had some unique qualities. He was honest, very kind, and he persevered. He did not view barriers as obstacles. He would either leap over them or sidestep them, but he worked diligently to achieve what he wanted. Kathy, you were his amazing soulmate. He said that to me many times. And he was so proud of his children and grandchildren. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me or may have only really seen me when I was about this small, my name is Riley and I was one of Donald's granddaughters. So I wasn't initially planning on speaking, so this might go a little bit sometimes how his stories went, a little long, a little rambly, a little all over the place, kind of repetitive, but I swear there's a point to it, and hopefully it's memorable. So I think my sister already touched a bit on what Donald was like, or how I refer to him as D, as a grandfather growing up. And so I'm not going to touch as much on that. The one thing that I will touch on is something that helped us bond, and I think part of what shaped his role, not only as a grandfather, but as a mentor figure for me in my childhood, was soccer. So, like Dee, I played soccer growing up, and I think that was something that helped us bond with each other and definitely develop a relationship that continued to grow into adulthood. So, even though there were some days where I also felt underlooked as a player, he was always cheering me on, trying to give advice, and he used to tell me, and hearing more about his soccer experience now definitely means a lot more to me, that he used to say that you have a gift. Even when there were times where I would be on the sidelines or I wouldn't think I was doing as good. He's like, "I see you out there and you need to believe in yourself." He used to say, "You're a smart player, you're a good player, and you need to believe in yourself." And I think that's something that a lot of your stories have really kind of shared, is his growth and believing in himself, and that's something that I think he has taught me, especially into adulthood. It's another unique thing that I'm very grateful to experience. Growing up, he was up here in DC, and he came down for every single dance recital, big soccer tournaments, graduation. But what I've been really blessed with is as I have grown into adulthood, I became very fortunate to have moved up here, and my relationship with him has grown not only into one where he was my grandfather, but also an adult mentor and friend. Going into my last year at University of North Carolina, I was fortunate that Nan and Dee let me live with them that summer as I started my internship at the FBI. While I was very grateful and supportive that he taught me many things about DC, including the speed cameras that tend to sometimes switch locations, apparently. How to parallel park, although I have learned I have not picked that one up, but I know my Aunt Thelma has learned how to park in reverse. I have not mastered that one, but there are times where he's like, you need to get out there and we're gonna park in between trash cans. You need a parallel park. Something that was very fitting today is last year there was a ton of snow, and he had taught me how to scrape snow off of my car, something I had not known how to do growing up in Florida. And at my internship graduation that summer, it was a small parents-only thing. My parents were still down in Florida, but he's like, no, Nan and I are gonna be there. And that was something that was really special, to have them there. As I've been up in the DC area, when I was moving, I was very excited to come here, not only because of the memories I had with DC, with Nan and Dee growing up, but also because it meant I was going to be moving down the street from them. My first year in DC, I lived a solid 3 minutes away on East-West Highway, where I was very fortunate to have almost weekly dinners with Nan and Dee. To the point, I think Dee had given me a house key. I have not yet returned, Nan. I don't know if you know that. And I was very fortunate to learn and share Dee's fundamental food groups of Lido pizza and Chinese food. Let me see, what else was there? While with Nan and Dee, especially at these dinners, I really developed a more solid relationship with Dee. And what was very special was to transform kind of my childhood grandfather relationship into one of a more adult friendship and mentor. He helped me navigate the struggles of entry-level positions. He gave me advice such as learning how to vent with him and Nan over the dinner table and keep my mouth shut in the office if I wanted to keep my job. When I graduated from Quantico last year, again, he and Nan were one of the first two people in the audience. So that was something he would not want to miss. And I guess as I kind of finish today, very grateful to have been able to spend the last couple years up here with him, because he was so much more than my grandfather. He was one of my friends, and he was a mentor to me. And I'm very grateful that you all got a special relationship with him as well. Thank you.
Similar to my mom, I don't want to be outshined by both my sisters, so I thought I'd say my piece and my connection with Dee, we call them Dee, as my other two sisters have said. I think looking up at the slideshow, one of the biggest memories, and it was an annual thing, was the Disney trip. I think that was every year. We'd always ask my parents, oh, what weekend are we going to Disney? It was always in January. It's always the same weekend, but we wanted to hear that we were still going. And some of the memories that we had, remember the claw. He would tickle us. He'd have his hand called the claw, and as a little kid, terrified me, but made me laugh. And in one of these pictures, I see Dee, me, my dad, and Callie standing in front of a huge roller coaster named Mount Everest. I must have been 5 years old at the time, a little daredevil, wanting to go on everything. Barely tall enough to ride the ride. We get on, and we do the first little turn, pretty easy. He looks at me and goes, so far, so good. That was about where it ended. I think we both came off that ride a little bit traumatized. I think it was a long time before we rode that ride again. One of the biggest things that I connected with D2, and I know a lot of people have said it today, is sports. He is obviously probably the biggest Washington sports fan I've ever met. I remember vividly talking to him about the Kirk Cousins contract situation when it was going on and getting his thoughts on that. And I think one of the coolest things that I get to say is I have a perfect memory of where Nan and Dee got to travel, because every time they traveled, they'd bring me back a soccer jersey from the country that they went to. And I have it all still in my room, ready to go through and just reminisce. Through soccer, Dee was able to teach me a lot of life lessons, especially through soccer tryouts. So for me, every year we go through tryouts. There are years that we'd make it and years that we wouldn't. But through the good and the bad, he'd always tell me, be yourself, don't try and do too much, but also don't hang around the back, like make some plays. But he'd always keep my head up. He'd always encourage me to keep going, even if I didn't want to, even if I was tired. And I think that was always something that I appreciated. Like my sister just said, I also got the privilege to live with Nan and Dee for a summer while I was interning up here in Congress. And it was an awesome experience. I think one of the core memories I have is being able to tell my intern friends and them getting jealous that I have a salad and dinner waiting for me to go home. Which, for those that knew me growing up, the fact that I would ever eat a salad willingly was shocking. But I can always say that those are some of the fondest memories I had up here. And then, I think one of the last things I want to say is, Dee was the most positive person I think I've ever met. I've never saw him upset, even when he was struggling. He never showed it, at least not to me. The last conversation I had with him, I had the privilege of FaceTiming him to be able to say goodbye. And you know how he started the conversation? Did you see that Notre Dame win last weekend? And immediately, the focus was shifted and we were just able to talk football like just any other time. And I think it made both of us feel a lot better, and it was a good memory for me to end on with him, because I know that he would move the earth for me, for anybody in this room, to make us happy. So I just want to say that I love you, Dee. I miss you. I'll always miss you. And I hope I can continue making you proud of me for the future.
Yeah, I should note, by the way, that my brother-in-law, Paul, is a Notre Dame graduate. And I think that was definitely a point in your favor with my dad. So we became a true Notre Dame family. So I'm going to call Kathy up here in a moment. Before I do, though, I just want to thank everyone for coming. Kathy's going to do that as well. I just also want to take a moment to thank everybody who came to visit my father during these last 4 or 5 months when things were difficult for him and he was housebound. And he was such a social creature that to have people come to him and spend some time with him was just really important and really special. And a lot of you who are here did that. And I also just want to take a quick moment to just acknowledge people who loved my dad, who didn't come up here and speak. We know that everyone here cared deeply about him, and we thank you for the love and friendship that you gave to him. With that, I will call Kathy up.
Thank you, Brandon. And I will say Brandon spent the last few months flying back and forth from Chicago. He was teaching a class on Monday nights, Monday afternoon. He came in Monday night, left Sunday, and came back on Monday night for several months. And he was just an incredible help and warmth for me, and it bonded have an even greater bond with his dad. And I do want to correct or explain that story about what his father did with the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover, because I have heard this story many times, and it always was the same story, which was pretty cool. He called himself the youngest gun runner because he delivered guns often. He was about 10. He delivered them to the FBI. And one day he walked in, and J. Edgar Hoover was actually a neighbor of theirs at the time. And he passed the door where Hoover was, and he was in the inner office, and there was an outer office, and the secretary was not there. And he thought he caught Hoover's eyes, and he knew that his father always said, if you catch an adult's eye, you should go in and say hello. So he went in, he said hello, and J. Edgar Hoover said, hello, Donald. Have you delivered the guns? And he said, yes. And he said, just a minute. And he pressed a button under his desk, and someone came in. He said, show Donald the Ma Barker room and take him for an ice cream, right? And he told his father the story, and his father said, some secretary is going to be sent to the outer reaches of Alaska about next week. So anyway, needed to clarify that story. But let me tell you a little bit about us. When I first met Donald over 38 years ago, I knew two things. First, he was fun to be with. He was interesting. He was comfortable. And second, he made me laugh. And both were a foundation for a long and lasting love story with a man that gave me everything I could wish for. A long, lifelong romance, friendship, and companionship. And we just got along great, and he was my very best friend. Sounds easy? Well, many men promise a rose garden, but not Donald. As Richard mentioned earlier, he promised me a roller coaster, and boy, did he deliver. We met March 1st of 1987, first date March 14th, second March 28th, third April 4th, and then we saw each other every single day. For some reason, I wasn't traveling unusually for my law firm, and got married September 27th of that year. We merged two 16-year-olds, Alexis and Ian, and one 14-year-old, Brandon. With three teenagers in the house, I called him a lot and said, you know, I really have to work tonight. Could you take care of the kids? But fortunately, by the time they were 25, all three were pretty human again, and to our delight and amazement, and adding Alexis and Brandon to my life was one of the greatest gifts that Donald gave me, as was his love for and his parenting of Ian. Of course, I didn't really recognize this until the kids were 25, but we understand. Our story was not just chronological. It was a tale of growth. Often one visualizes a partner as ideal and perfect when you're dating and you're just getting to know each other. And then later, as time goes on, you recognize there's lots of flaws there. But my experience with Donald was different. What I realized as we got to know each other, he became more fun and better companion and just wonderful to be with. So instead of seeing things getting worse, things just got better constantly. I have many wonderful tales to tell, which I won't go into today, given the time, but I'm going to share a few that illustrate Don's intelligence, his business acumen, and his unending generosity of spirit. For much of his life, and I think people touched on this, Brandon touched on this earlier, but he was considered an athlete, not a scholar. But he innately knew something was wrong with this description because, as he told me and as Brandon mentioned, no one could be wrong all of the time. But early in our relationship, Donald was diagnosed with dyslexia, and I was very worried that he was going to be disturbed and upset by this diagnosis, but he was thrilled because suddenly there was a name to his situation, and he could understand how people incorrectly thought he lacked intelligence. And that may have been the beginning of his acceptance of his own capabilities. He gained sufficient confidence to be wonderful in the plays we saw and the insights. Emily can tell you about the insights he shared with us that we hadn't even thought of until he mentioned and light bulbs went off. He had a lifelong love of history and was self-educated in history. He loved all the historical places we visited and our travels, and he'd share stories that weren't on the board in front of us, but what he remembered from his studies. And when I went to St. John's College for my master's after I retired, and everyone asked, what are you going to do with that? I was studying history, and history goes straight through my head. And I was telling him generally what we're talking about, and he remembered details about the Peloponnesian War that I had read about 6 days ago and had totally forgotten. But he remembered it from 40 years ago. His capabilities went beyond the intellectual area and into the business arena. Some of you know that we did not exactly build the station on a shoestring. We took a home equity loan and lots of other loans. And Don envisioned this station with the car wash, the bays, the service area, and the pumps. And he took a bunch of bankers over who he was hoping would loan us a bunch of money. And they said, it's impossible, it can't be done in this space. And he said, oh, yes, it can. And he took them across the street to what was then O'Donnell's lot. And he said, now visualize it. And he explained his vision. And they saw it. They saw from across the street what he had seen on the lot. And they loaned us a bunch of money, which was wonderful. Of course, when I asked Don what was our fallback position now that we were deeply in debt, he said, the floor. But that was our roller coaster that Richard mentioned, and I lived for a long time. He continued to fight for keeping all these functions on the lot. And my favorite was when he met with he met with Montgomery County Park and Planning. And the head of planning was there, and his aide was there saying, you can't have the car wash, it won't fit on the lot. And Don turned to his consultants and they said, you promised me it would. And they said, yeah, it's doable. It's tight, but it's doable. And Dennis, the head of planning, said, you got to think of something fast. You're going to lose it. And Donald started thinking, what are the variables here? How could he come up with this analysis that was different? And he suddenly realized very quickly it was the size of the car. So he asked the aide what size of car he used. And the aide said, quote, the right size. Well, Donald sort of jumped in the air, and the men on both sides held him back before he leaped over the table and strangled the aide. And then finally found out the aide was talking about a double-stretch limousine. Donald promised never to allow a double-stretch limousine in the car wash, and it got approved. The roller coaster went up as well. He never traveled much, and travel was in my blood, and people who know me well know that. So Donald agreed to take me anywhere in the world, as long as it was with carry-on luggage. For over 60 countries, I happily complied with this pretty minimal directive. We started with Canada, moved to England, and then for our first foreign language country, I chose Italy, where the food, wine, and people were so wonderful that hand signals were sufficient when language difficulty arose. And after that, it was 6 continents and many adventures. Even when he didn't want to visit a country, he was an enthusiastic traveler. For my 60th birthday, I wanted Africa. Donald said, Africa's at the bottom of my list. But, of course, he agreed just to please me, which he often did. When we got close to Nairobi in the plane, I noticed Donald tensing up. I couldn't figure it out. We landed, and he still stayed tense until he saw someone with a sign saying my name, that was saying Fogel, and stuck out his hand and said, my name is Ibrahim, and I'm your guide for the next 9 days. And Donald said, phew. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, we're in Nairobi, Africa. We don't speak the language. We have no one to call. What happened if the guy didn't show up? Well, Donald, of course, had been thinking about this all along, but yeah, it was okay. But he ended up enjoying every second of that trip, as he did on almost every trip that we took. I had an incredible 38 years of adventure with my love and my very best friend. But Don was much more than a smart, fun guy with wonderful stories to tell. He was loving to family and friends, generous with his time and his friendship. He was an incredible father, grandfather, uncle, brother, and friend, in addition to being an incredible husband. His love for Alexis, Brandon, and Ian was palpable and extended to Paul and Thelma when Alexis and Ian married. He got such joy from his grandchildren, Callie, Riley, Cole, Bradley, Kaina, Jay, and Gemma, and celebrated as many key moments in their lives as humanly possible, something you heard about earlier. And he readily embraced Riley's fiance, Drew, and Bradley's fiance, Duda, and looked forward to welcoming them officially into the family. But time was short. Don lived his life to the fullest, always positive, always happy, and always with a wonderful, though sometimes mischievous, sense of humor. To the end, he made me smile and laugh, and he only worried about me, not himself. Although the roller coaster has stopped, the memories are constant. I was so fortunate to have him and loved him for a magnificent 38 years. I just selfishly wanted more. And I thank everyone who spoke, everyone who visited, and everyone here who loved him so dearly. And he was a special guy. Thank you.